We're literally just talking. We just like paused for a second.
There's this creator on Instagram that I love that acts like I have to get a bobby pin or I'm not going to be able to live my life today. Who does like interpretations of the Kardashians. And
I know who she is. And she sounds just like Kourtney.
Yes. And when she, well, like honestly, all of them, but because they all sound very similar. She does the.
Yes.
I literally was doing that and I was like, oh my God. Maybe
I like her. She's funny. And she talks really slow when she like acts like Kourtney.
Yes. I fucking not even organic. Not even vegan. Not the vegan. Like that's when she does Kourtney.
Chloe, and then she's like has like a
not the vegan. Oh, it's fucking I can't.
See, that's the kind of content I will support. It's the other
all day
long. Like I can't.
All day long. That's just funny as hell. It's funny as hell.
Lately, my algorithm, which I'm thankful for, has been red pandas, which I want one so bad.
Literally
I need one.
Cut my hand off to be able to pet one
so bad.
I just want to pet it. Just let me pet it.
I saw one today and it was like, red pandas are all cute until they get angry. And then it was a video of a red panda coming up that wanted an apple. And they were like, here it is approaching with an angry face. And then it went like this with its little fist, but it still looked so cute. I want one so bad.
I love when they get scared.
Yes.
And I love how their feet don't look like feet. They literally look like lollipops.
Yes.
like just little pops.
I need one in my life.
I know.
Or I want a baby pig.
No, I want a baby raccoon.
I mean, dude, I saw a video of a massive raccoon. It's
legal.
Huge. You'd have to get him as a baby, otherwise they'll fuck you up.
Yeah, you can legally own one as a pet in Wisconsin. So
my mom had one when she was a kid.
My best friend Erin's mom had one as a kid.
Why isn't that more normalized? What are we doing?
Yeah,
they're everywhere.
They're literally free outside.
Just go pick one up.
Why did I see a raccoon? It was on a reel and he was like there was like two wires coming down and then it was hanging a bird feeder and he was like flopped over the bird feeder, like hanging on, kind of like folded over it.
Yes.
And the wind was going and I was like, save him. Why are you just recording? Save him. Did you see the fucking video of an orangutan yeeting an opossum out of its enclosure?
No.
Yeeted.
Possums freak me out.
Stephanie. They are.
You like them?
Yes.
Tails are like big reptiles.
Stephanie, they eat ticks. They don't get rabies. They literally positive. They are the only marsupial in the United States. They eat ticks and they don't get rabies. The Post goes around every summer to share so people when they
stop killing them.
Yeah, so they stop just because they don't look appealing.
Yeah. I used to leave my ex-husband's house. He had like a back door with like a porch and stuff. And I will never forget the time I was walking out the back door. It was like 2 a.m. and there was a fucking possum on the deck just staring at me. And I was like, I'm going to get murdered. I'm going to be killed. It was terrifying.
And they're scaredy cats.
Yeah.
They're scaredy. They like look scary, but they don't do anything. You should be worried about raccoons.
Oh, for sure. Raccoons will fuck you up.
They
will fuck you up.
Erin and I used to drive around fucking when we were younger, especially in the ghetto. Like, why? What are we doing? Why are we doing that?
That's what we did though.
There was a giant raccoon sitting on the curb like a human. Like his butt was on the curb and he was eating something.
Like
and I was
cats and dogs do sometimes.
I was like, that's an OG. That is an OG.
He's the leader of the pack here in this
runs these streets. I was like, shut up. And that's back when like internet on your phone was $14 a minute.
And you never dared press the world button because you would have been charged $1,000.
No, when I tell you, I would take the battery out immediately. So I would slide the back off and take the battery out.
These kids don't know. They don't know.
So today we're talking about the 90s. Just kidding.
I wish that would be such a fun episode.
Oh my God, I would love it so much. I would love it so. When I tell you I am pumped for the live action remake of Fern Gully.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
The chokehold that movie had me
loved Fern Gully.
Oh my God.
Have you guys watched The Little Mermaid yet?
Yeah, we went and saw it for free. Because Soap School did a
like
where
a
you could
viewing.
sign up for tickets, and I was like, fuck yeah, hell yeah, we'll go for free, even if it's not good. But it was so cute.
I started watching it last weekend and I got distracted, so I didn't finish yet.
Obviously, I love the original.
I was gonna say, like, my OCD is like, don't add new songs. We have a soundtrack.
Please stop
don't add randoms.
So, like, any of the live action remakes, I think they're great, but I have never been like, that replaces. Never.
Absolutely ever. Not. Beauty and the Beast? No. Nothing will ever.
I love Emma Watson. Don't get me wrong. I love the shit out of
the movie, but like, no.
It's not the real one.
I do want to see live action Mulan. I haven't watched that one. I loved Mulan. That movie had me in a fucking chokehold.
That soundtrack?
Yeah.
That soundtrack.
Yes. Didn't watch Lion King either.
That was my friend Sean's favorite song. And it still is. And anytime I see anything regarding Mulan, I think of him. And I usually send him the meme or whatever that it is.
That's awesome.
Lion King live action remake. Well, it wasn't like live action remake, but I was like,
really? That's why I didn't watch it.
Lion King as a kid.
Oh, same.
Same. I don't know how I'll feel about a Moana one. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. You better not put any new sounds on there. You better not.
I know.
Don't. Moana soundtrack is gold.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one.
It is. I'm going to say it right now, and I'll die on this hill. It's the best Disney soundtrack there ever was. I'm saying it.
Wow.
I'm saying it. Best Disney soundtrack there ever was. Ever.
Wow.
I could literally sing the whole thing front to back. Even the interludes where it's being sung in Samoan or Hawaiian or I don't know. But
Samoan is right.
Yeah, okay. I thought it was Samoan. But I can make the sounds. I don't know what
that's
saying.
How I feel about Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Little Mermaid. Those are my core three.
I love Aladdin.
So much.
The
way that I wanted to be Jasmine when I was a kid. I was her for Halloween one year. I wanted to be her.
I wanted a pet tiger and I thought it was very unfair. I had really focused on the animals. Like Abu was one of my favorites. I had an Abu stuffed animal and I loved it. Bugs Life, I got the big ant stuffed animal for Christmas one year and it was literally the best day of my life.
I love the caterpillar in Bugs Life. Because he's just like kind of like a dud, like a dud.
Beautiful butterfly. Okay, we're gonna get into it. Okay. So today we're not talking about Disney movies at all.
We could, but we're not.
Literally has nothing to do with anything.
No,
we just didn't have a second to catch up.
It brings us joy. That's fine.
So much joy. So I'm literally gonna listen to the Moana soundtrack later when I cut the grass.
Excellent.
That's it. Feels so good. Anyways, okay. So what we're talking about today, we're going to talk about, this is episode 106. Shout out to us. We're talking about BPD. So we're taking a look at our most listened to episodes. Top 10 episodes. And the one episode, the highest ranking episode was BPD versus bipolar and like us talking about the differences between the two. Because unbeknownst to us, like back when we recorded it, we didn't really realize like people weren't understanding that BPD does not mean bipolar disorder, but like we can understand how people got there, right?
Correct.
But in our world, BPD has always been borderline personality disorder. And personality disorders and mood disorder, like we're totally separate. Worlds apart. So today we're going to talk about what it might be like to live with somebody in your life who has BPD, and what that might show up like, what it might feel like, how you might experience it, how they experience things. And so the disclaimer on this episode is that we are giving very selective moments that could happen to anybody. However, somebody who has BPD doesn't have to exhibit these symptoms or these thought process, this like thought process that we're going to talk about. We're not giving free reign information for you to take and then put it on somebody in your life and be like, yeah, BPD.
We're not giving you diagnostic criteria to start labeling people. And here's the other caveat is that excuse me, there may be some of these traits that people display and these people don't have BPD. We're just giving tips and tricks to people who have the diagnosis and are living with it every day, and the people who are in their life, like ways to appropriately communicate with somebody, because sometimes that's difficult. Here's the thing. It's hard to communicate with people, period.
In general.
End of story.
In general.
Right.
And I think the thing to pay attention to is, and I stand by this, everybody exhibits symptoms of personality disorders. Everybody in our life has at one point or another, done something that is manipulative, or
just because somebody's selfish doesn't mean they're a narcissist.
Exactly. Oh my God.
That's a whole nother episode.
I'm so tired. I'm so tired of that word. I'm so tired of it. I'm so tired of gaslighting. So I saw a post the other day that was talking about phrases that are helpful and phrases that are gaslighting. And one of the phrases that was gaslighting was, "I'm sorry you feel that way." It's not gaslighting.
That's not gaslighting.
Not gaslighting at all. It's not. I don't cultivate feelings for you. And if you were feeling some type of way and it is causing you distress, I am sorry you do feel that way. Correct. I'm not sorry you feel that way, bitch, but I didn't do it. I also think there has to be an acknowledgement of tone, delivery, as much 100%. As I don't want to, feed into Kathleen and Richard's, it's about the way that you deliver it. And I'm like, oh God, that's my whole life. Yeah. It's not what you say, Stephanie. It's how you say it. Wiggling around. And it's yes. You might have had a point. Okay. You might have, been onto something. You might have been onto something. Because when my daughter does that, I'm like, you can get talked to today. Literally. We can have a convo. Yes. So I have to put my vitamins out. Otherwise I'm never going to take them. And they have to be ASMR story of my life. Literally. So let's talk about it. I don't really know where to start because I feel like it's so broad and it's I don't know where to dive into it. So I would say, and this is based on some client interactions I've had, right? Where maybe they have a partner with BPD or a parent with BPD, and things can get volatile, whether that means physically or just emotionally volatile, right? Yeah. And I think, and the ways that I have presented myself in the past with clients with BPD is, and this is what I tell partners, parents, friends, fill in the blank with whatever feels good to you, is you need to be as neutral and calm as possible, right? Because if you are giving, I don't want to say giving in, if you are giving this visceral emotional response to them, you are not going to get through to them. That fight is going to continue. It's going to be combative. It's not going to be productive. So for example, we worked with a lot of teenagers who would self-harm, and in talking with parents, and please hear me when I say, I can't fathom being a parent of a child who engages in self-harm and acting in a calm manner, because that's fucking scary. Absolutely. It's scary. Absolutely. It's scary. It's heartbreaking. You never want your kids to be in pain. If you don't understand what self-harm means, you can't even fathom, right? But I would have the conversation constantly of when they come to you and they say, I have urges to self-harm or I self-harmed, I need you to not react emotionally, right? Because A, they're not going to want to come and tell you again. B, they're going to feel guilt and shame because they have now caused you to feel some type of way, because that's a teenager's brain. We know as adults, I'm not responsible for somebody else's feelings. And C, coming at them with any sort of emotion is just going to create panic, right? Or anger or frustration. So when I say come at them with a calm manner and calm demeanor, ideally we'd like to be in that wise mind, right? There's going to be some emotion because that you love that person. Yeah. There's going to be some logic. Let's put them together and get to that wise mind place. Does that make sense? 100%. And also I have found that it is helpful for me to discuss with Sophia, if I'm reacting to something, I even did it this morning because she called me and she, did I talk about this? No, I talked about it before. So I was I'm having deja vu, right? What's going on? She called me and she never calls me. The attendance line never calls. And I knew that I had dropped her off on time. I knew that she was fine. I knew she wasn't on the side of the street somewhere. Yeah, so she wasn't hacking her lungs. So I was why are you guys calling me? What went on? What's happening? And then there was that threat at park I think it was Park, or it might have been Horlick, but like a kid got cut. This is all hearsay. I didn't read a news article or anything,
Okay.
but that a kid got cut from the football team and went to school with a gun.
No.
And approached the coach.
The way
So,
that
like,
I will take my
like,
kid out of school so fucking fast.
I'm so like nervous about those things.
Yes.
So in my mind, I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And so I answered the phone and she was like, hey, Ma. I was like, this is Mari, because I figured it would be somebody.
Yeah.
And she was like, hey. And I was like, hey, what's going on? And she was like, and she goes, what do I say? And I'm like, I'm your mom.
Yeah.
I was like, why are you calling me? And I said it just like that.
Sure.
I was like, why are you calling me? Because I was also walking into Starbucks and it was so busy. And so it was like a lot of things were going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she goes, oh, you forgot my money for gym. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, well, first of all, I don't keep cash on me. So, and I was like, ask him if I can bring it when I pick you up. And she was like, can she do that? And she said, yeah. And I said, okay. And I didn't apologize to her, like say where I was coming from. So I texted her and I said, I'm sorry if I sounded sassy on the phone. I was just worried that you were like sick or hurt or something. And so I'll make sure that she sees it when I pick her up. But like, even if you do have those moments, right? Because obviously those moments are scary and they're going to get the best of us sometimes, 100%. Right? So being able to come back to that and say, you know, I want to talk about my reaction. I want to talk about, I'm coming from a place of fear and I love you and I care about you and I don't want anything to happen to you. So I immediately just got panicked and it came out and I don't know if it looked like anger to you. I don't know if it looked like irritation or upsetness, but like, I'm telling you, like, it was panic. And so like, let's talk about that. How do you feel about that? And then you even get to be able to have some of those moments of like, well, I'm sorry I did that, or I'm sorry I created. And it's like, no, I don't need you to apologize. This isn't something we're not apologizing for feelings. I'm sharing my reaction so that, you know, there's no cross signals or we know where I'm coming from. But I think that I do understand from seeing, right? Sure. I do understand from having to have those conversations and be in family sessions and deliver those feelings of how that approaches parents. And it was, I think, helpful for me to be there to be able to, you know, facilitate like what, you know, how you feel about mom and dad's reaction. Like, this is what mom and dad's, correct me if I'm wrong. This is what mom and dad's reaction, you know, is telling me, like, what is it telling you, to be able to be there to field that. But I think that when we're working with people who have personality disorders, that personality disorders develop because of the way that person has learned to survive and get by in their life,
and view the world around them,
in the world around them. So the behaviors, habits, symptoms of this diagnosis that they've picked up have been for survival. And so I think when I am meeting somebody and I am assessing, and if that's the diagnosis that I'm leaning towards, I've understood that sometimes therapists don't
share diagnoses.
They don't share diagnoses, but especially personality disorders.
100%.
Which is,
you're doing that client a disservice.
Yeah, it's wild to me, because in my mind, I'm like, this is going to go two ways. Either we're going to be open and we're going to work on it, or you're not going to like what I have to say and you're not going to come back. But what I'm not going to do is go around for 3 months and just pretend like this isn't what you're struggling with. Yeah. So when I'm talking about like, this is the criteria I see, this is the reason I'm going with this diagnosis. And here's the thing, being private pay, I don't need to put a diagnosis anywhere. Like, it's not going to your insurance. It's not going to your job. It's not going anywhere. I think that it is helpful to give people the diagnosis or what I'm seeing so that you have a starting point, right? Because if I'm operating out of DBT and I'm looking at walking the middle path, first, we must accept something before we can move towards change. Understanding the root or just kind of like the origin, to me, is helpful to then start moving forward. But I give people the chance of like, we can talk about it and move forward and proceed with such. Or if you don't care about the origin, that's totally okay too. This is what I'm seeing, so this is what I'm going to be treating. Are you okay or comfortable with that? So then being able to have that conversation and following it up with, while these are characteristics of your personality, here's what I need you to understand. This was survival. These were manifested and ingrained and learned patterns of behavior to survive. Right. And I mean that, I can understand that maybe that sounds dramatic, or that sounds really like reactive of like survival. Really, bombs weren't going off in my house. Here's the thing. Bombs don't have to be going off. It doesn't have to be some giant
trauma. Doesn't have to mean war.
Exactly. And that is the thing. I just listened to Daring Greatly by Brene Brown.
I love that one.
Because I had listened to Dare to Lead, and I hadn't listened to it. And so I just finished it. And she's talking about like trauma for a child can be that perception or feeling of like that they don't belong or aren't lovable, or those moments. Like that's trauma for them. Even if it's not a parent being like, you don't belong, you suck, you this. If that's their interpretation, that's how that's what they're operating off of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
You're frozen.
So are you, but I can still hear you.
Okay.
What like, also, now you're back.
You're good.
What also can happen, and this is very similar to when I talk about anxiety and the anxiety center of your brain being the amygdala, and how it's always like it's there to look for threats, right? Like BPD, for example, is the same thing. You feel threatened all the time. You feel like people are always out to get you. Like you are being attacked, quote unquote, in whatever way or shape or form that resonates with you.
And like threaten can look like losing a relationship,
Correct.
Right? Like there's that giant fear of like, I'm not gonna be with this person, or they're gonna leave me, or my friends don't care about me, or this. Like threatening doesn't have to feel like you're like on guard fighting somebody off.
Which is why fear of abandonment is huge. And that is part of the criteria. Here's the thing. Excuse me. There are also attachment styles. And I will die on this hill where anxious attachment and BPD go hand in hand. That does not mean that everybody that has one has the other. But if you have one, you know what I'm saying? So again, this is clinicians talking. This isn't like I'm just giving you guys fucking willy-nilly free will to go assign these to people.
Please don't.
The other thing that I've noticed a lot too with clients is if there is a fear of abandonment, next comes self-sabotage, right? Like, oh, I'm going to fuck you up before you can fuck me up, right? Like I'm going to leave before you can leave, or I'm going to make things really bad for you. And then I'm going to show you that you were going to leave me, and I'm going to prove myself right.
Yep.
There has to be acknowledgement of what's within my control though, right? Everything we talk about with you guys can all be, I don't want to say fixed, whatever, but like bring it back to what's within my control.
Yes. It's not even about like, it's not like, we don't even like healing, like the healing comes from focusing on what is within our control. If you're focusing on what's within your control, you are being mindful in that moment and thinking with your wise mind, and also looking out for yourself. All of those things go hand in hand with healing.
Yep.
If I'm looking out for myself and I'm operating and making the choice that I think this is the choice I need to make right now, I'm showing my unconscious brain that I care about myself. I'm worthy of love and support. I'm showing up for myself. If I'm only focusing on what I can control, I'm not spending extra energy trying to think about all these other people's perceptions. If I'm focusing on what I can control, I'm not then trying to do shit out of spite because this person did this. Well, I'm going to go do this and they're going to feel like this. You don't know that. You could do that and they could be like, you fucking crazy person. What did you just like? They want to do this. I'm going to go slash their tires. That's within my control. And
or I'm going to threaten to hurt myself because I want to see how much they care.
Yes.
And what I've seen with, it doesn't matter, teens, adults, it doesn't matter. What I've seen with that is then they then get frustrated with their loved ones who then are nervous about them potentially hurting themselves. And I'm like, but can you blame them? You've made threats or you've made gestures and they love you. They don't want you to hurt yourself. So for them to automatically jump to this conclusion of like, oh my God, they're going to be unsafe. And for you to get mad, that's not necessarily fair. But that's where the communication has to come into play. And I think a lot of times too is they make these threats because they just feel so much emotional pain that they don't know what else to do in that moment. And they don't always want to die. And that goes with a lot of suicidality, right? Is that it's not even the act of dying. They don't want to feel the way they feel anymore because it's too much, right?
One thing that I talk about so much with clients is if you were never taught how to cope with things, how would you possibly know how to cope with things?
Correct.
That is one of the only things that realistically could come up just naturally, organically in your mind, because it's an option, right? Of like being like, well, that is something I could do. Instead, like I don't ever remember my parents sitting me down and saying, Mari, when you are angry, you can do this. When you are sad, you can do this.
No.
Right. And I even look at like my times with Sophia and I'm like, I'm not that diligent about it. I do bring it up and I have tried to show things, but sometimes when she gets like this morning, I had a moment because she didn't do her, well, it's not that she didn't, it's just that there was a miscommunication between us is that she's getting worksheets for math sent home and she is saying that all of the math needs to be done. So we've had a double-sided worksheet every night.
No.
And then two worksheets in her book. Well, come to find out, the worksheets in her book are what are due. The worksheets that are being sent home, you can turn in and get points and earn something for it.
Gotcha. Okay.
She didn't specify that. So we did worksheets first. The one day we did 3 worksheets and then two worksheets and then the worksheets in the book. And then there was another worksheet that we did first, but I didn't realize then she communicated. Well, I said, well, what is actually due tomorrow? Because on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we don't get home until 7:30. And she's booked salad from after school to 7:30. There's no time. She's like, well, the work in the book is due. And I was like, okay. And then she was like, I don't want to do it, blah, 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 blah. And then I was getting frustrated. So I'm not always like, well, here's what you can do to get frustrated, right? I'm managing my own fucking emotions of like, Mara, you can't lose it on her. Like, you, like put it together. And then I also was feeling nauseous this morning. So I was like, I'm going to puke. I'm going to pass out. Like what's going on? Like, so there's a whole slew of things happening. So I can understand that not every parent is going to be like, here's what we do. Let's pick something out of the feelings jar and let's try it. Right. Which would be very helpful. That is something that I do when I used to work with little kids. I'm talking to parents, get a fucking jar out there and put coping skills in it so you can just reach in and grab it. So I try to bring that understanding of like, if you weren't taught how to cope with these feelings, you can't possibly take that and use that against yourself. It would be the same. Like kids don't know how to shower properly.
Correct.
Well, you got to show them
everything.
Yes. Yeah, you got to teach them everything. So like, again, like how you can't fault yourself when you didn't know, nobody taught you. And now we can learn together and we can start to figure out different ways of coping instead of using these threats to get this attention, because again, that's a learned behavior. These threats, these vocal outbursts, these extreme emotions, all of those have been learned that if I do these things, then I'm going to get attention. I'm going to feel heard. I'm going to get the reaction that I want, because any reaction is better than no reaction, because I want to feel heard. I don't want to be ignored. I want to feel, loved or supported or whatever. And in my way, doing these things then satisfies that need for me. Even if on the outside, the rest of us are like, that's not love. That's not this. What do you like? These drag out, scream out fights are, you feel connection. And it's like, yeah, that is how that,
or it's viewed as passion. Connection. Like we fight and then we fuck and then we're great. Right. And that's where like the term love bomb is used a lot with narcissists of like, they love bomb me from the jump and they showered me with gifts. But that's also, and this is what I've seen with people with BPD, is that after a fight, when they have that second to realize, oh, fuck, I just fucked up, they will love bomb the shit out of you to make it up to you. They will send you the nice text messages. They will try to have sex with you. They want to be close to you. They want to be intimate with you as a way to reconnect with you, to be like, I fucked up. I'm sorry. Instead of sitting down to have the conversation.
Bitch, is my ex BPD? Bitch, I never thought about it.
Yeah. Like there's no conversations. It's just, I'm gonna have sex with you to show you how much I love you. You know what I'm saying?
And but the love bombing too, and the buying gifts and shit. Oh.
Yep. Sorry, Siri thinks I'm talking to her.
I love it all the
so
time.
Annoying. I hate it. I need to just like turn it off.
Constantly. I was on the phone the other day and she had like 14 paragraphs of listening to me, and I was like, what are we doing? Stop it.
I was thinking too, when you were talking about never being taught or shown how to handle emotions, I have so much, as an almost 40-year-old woman, compassion for my parents, because they had a terrible traumatic upbringing. Yeah. And they chose to go the opposite direction. I'm not going to beat my kids. I'm not going to, berate my kids. They went the opposite direction. What that looks like though is, I'm not going to talk about anything either, because I don't know how to. So it's just going to be the silent treatment until I'm ready to be over it. And sure, I could be bitter about that for the rest of my life and be like, I didn't have my emotional needs met. My parents were terrible. I'm not going to do that.
That is something that I really feel like needs to be worked out, because
1,000,000%.
we can acknowledge that our emotional needs as children weren't met sometimes, that doesn't mean I negate every other moment that I've had in my childhood where I can acknowledge that my parents were showing up for me.
100%.
My dad made a little helmet for my stuffed animals when we would go on bike rides for me, because I was afraid that they would be hurt. Like they wouldn't be safe too. Well, if I have to wear my helmet, then they have to wear a helmet.
Oh, Richard.
We never talked about feelings or anything, but he made my stuffed animals a helmet. He showed up for me in the way that he knew how, in the different areas that he could.
And the thing is like, what is the difference is, and I'm trying to be like as fucking polite as possible, because somebody's perception of trauma.
Remember that first episode, and I said we're not sugarcoating shit. Lay it out there.
I don't want to negate somebody's version of trauma with their parents. I'm speaking of my own experience with my parents. I was not physically abused. I was not emotionally abused. Did we talk about feelings? No, I don't feel, I would never label myself as emotionally neglected.
Right.
I have compassion for my parents who had no idea what the fuck they were doing. They were 20 and 21 when I was born, and they had very traumatic lives. My dad's not even from this fucking country. So like, you know what I'm saying? Like he couldn't even speak English when he went to elementary school. So like, what?
Well, and so that this might be a hot take, but if we're looking at emotional abuse and like its origin and where it starts, if like your parents aren't meeting your emotional needs and whatnot, in my mind, I feel that can be healed with bringing compassion to understanding what your parents went through.
Sure.
And so I think a lot of the time the frustration comes from, but what about me? What about what happened to me? What about my journey? What about that? Here's the thing. When we're going back and looking at these things and acknowledging that that person couldn't have shown up the way that I wanted them to because they didn't know how, that's not negating your story. It's not taking away from what you went through. It's understanding the origin. It's not a free pass. I can love my parents and also know that I wish things had been differently.
Sure.
I wish I had been communicated with. I wish somebody would have fucking found out that I was fucking ADHD.
Well,
before high school even, please, for the love of fucking God. But like, it is what it is. My mom was like, well, you still were able to keep it together. And we
talked about this before.
I didn't think you needed to be like, it was okay. And I was like, I get it, dude. I so get it. I don't harbor any ill will against that because again, you didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so I think that's the thing is like, when you in my mind are really focused on that healing journey, you start to remove the but what about me aspect, because it's together. It's both and. It's not this, it's not one or the other. It's not black and white. It's both and. I feel that there could have been things done differently and I deserve different treatment. And I can understand that there weren't the fucking tools, man. There weren't. Acceptance doesn't equal approval.
Correct. What I feel happens a lot too, especially with adults with BPD, is typically speaking, not all the time, so like don't fucking quote me on this, but say you're a woman with BPD, I would encourage you to look at patterns that your mom has or your dad. Doesn't have to be a woman, right?
Right.
Part of this is like a learned behavior that you mimic growing up, right? So if you are an adult woman who's having a hard time with your mother, like, you are in control of yourself, and that is it. If your mom is continuing to have these like damaging patterns and not communicating with you and not on the same level as you, you need to have boundaries. You need to put boundaries in place. You need to have healthy communication. You need to do what's within your control to make sure that you feel better. It's not this like, well, that's just how she is. I just got to deal with it.
No, you don't.
Says who?
No, you don't.
Says who?
No, you don't. If you wanted a better version of my story, you should have acted better. If you wanted a better role, if you wanted a better part, you could have acted differently. So no, I do not. I do not have to subject myself to being around people who do not respect my boundaries, who do not understand. Is setting those boundaries difficult and walking away from relationships difficult? Absolutely. I'll validate that all day long. What you aren't going to find, though, is me sacrificing myself for somebody else. I've said it before. I'll say it again. You can find it in quite a few episodes, and it's come up a lot in my sessions this week, is I know what I bring to the table. In any relationship that I'm going to have, familial, intimate, friends, I know what I bring to the table. I am very self-aware. I have done a lot of fucking work to get to this point, and I show up authentically. So I know what I'm bringing. If you aren't bringing anything to my table, you do not get a free seat. You don't get to sit here. You don't get to eat with me. Period. And does that hurt when I have to say to some people, like, this isn't the relationship for me? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Vulnerability doesn't feel good. It doesn't. If it feels good, you're not doing it right. It doesn't.
Do you get this with clients? So say you have a client with like a partner with BPD, what I hear them say a lot, and I'm not discounting what they say because I understand what they're saying, but so if you have somebody who like incessantly messages you and they just won't quit, and I ask them like, well, what happens if you just don't respond? If you set a firm limit and say, we're not doing this, we've already talked about this, then they just ramp it up and make it worse. So what do you tell those clients to do?
Put your phone on do not disturb, turn your phone off, mute their messages. And if it goes to like where it's, whatever, and you feel like you have to respond, the only response is reiterating that boundary. The only response. You don't touch anything that they've said. You reiterate the boundary that you've already set and talked about. If you haven't set the boundary, ignoring, ghosting, any of those things isn't setting a boundary.
No.
You need to verbalize your boundaries.
Correct.
That is something that is so important. People are like, well, I think they know. Then they don't. If you are like, oh, I'm not sure, then it didn't happen. Any boundary that I've set with people, it is, I know and can remember the verbal words, the email, the text message, whatever way it was delivered, the verbal boundary that was set. So I can bring it right back to that moment when somebody crosses a boundary, bring it right back to that moment.
And the thing is when things do get extreme, so whether it's volatile and they're destroying things at home, they're making threats to themselves, they have a weapon, they're attacking you. Here's the reality. And this is not going to feel good. You can call the police. 1000%.
I
have had to tell parents to call the police on their children. That was not a comfortable fucking conversation.
Correct.
But they had to have consequences for their actions. And hear me when I say, I understand that they are struggling with something 100,000%.
Yes.
But they have to be held accountable of like, you cannot rip the door off the wall. You cannot threaten me with a knife. You cannot physically attack me or your sister, your dad, your brother, whatever. You can't punch holes in the walls. That's not acceptable behavior. So what do we need to do to get you to a point where you feel like you can manage your emotions, right? So we can sit down and have a conversation about this. It takes a shit ton of practice. It's not like one day you're punching holes in the walls and next day you're fucking meditating with your parents. That's not how that works. Exactly. But like, there has to be consequences, and there has to be a desire to change for anything. It doesn't matter if it's BPD, depression, anxiety, it doesn't matter. There has to be a desire to want to make things better for yourself. And I get that sometimes it feels hopeless. And sometimes it feels like, well, what the fuck's the point? Nothing's going to change. Not with an attitude like that.
Correct.
It won't. What I also feel like happens a lot with my clients with BPD, and I can't tell you the amount of times this has happened, is when they are getting validation from me, I am the best therapist in the world.
Yep.
When I challenge them, I'm dead to them.
When I set a limit.
Yes. They don't want to come back. They don't want to reschedule. They don't want to talk to me. I'm like, I don't take that personal. I used to when I was a younger therapist and I didn't know any better. Because obviously as a younger therapist, you want to help and heal everybody and make sure everybody likes you. Sure, and then you come to realize like, that's not how that works.
Yeah. I don't give a shit.
What I'm saying.
I like myself. Period. That goes for everybody, not clients.
Correct.
Just everyone. I like me.
It's a common theme though. If you wrong them, and this isn't for everybody, this is a general statement. If you wrong them, you're dead to them. They want nothing to do with you anymore until they decide they need you, or until they're over whatever it is that happened.
Yep. And my boundary is still there. My boundary is still there. And if it's been however many months and then they come back, I verbalize in the email, like we can reschedule. Absolutely. We are going to talk about the last session that we had. Mm-hmm. So if you feel comfortable knowing that is going to be the first topic that we address, amazing. If you don't, then I've had multiple people, not multiple people walk out of a session, but I had one person walk out of a session 100% because they didn't want to be confronted with the lies and everything that had come out because whatever reason. And so when they had called, they hadn't even called, their wife called for them. When they had called to reschedule, I said, I don't mind taking this person back. What needs to be understood though is that there will be a conversation had. We're going to discuss the past year of treatment and what that was like and why we decided to go that route. I need to understand. So.
And I think what's hard
never
is
heard from them again.
typically speaking, and this isn't just BPD, but typically speaking, there is a justified feeling of their reaction, right? Like at their core, they feel like they are reacting in a way that they have to. So changing that almost sounds like, well, you're trying to change me as a person. Here's the thing. Do you enjoy going through this emotional roller coaster? I can't imagine that this feels good to you. I can't imagine that after this fight has ended and you have time to wind down that you're like, man, that fucking felt good. I'm so glad I did that.
I feel solid. I feel stable.
I feel great.
Well,
my guess is that you feel like a piece of shit.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, like if you felt in that moment that walking out was your only option, okay. But I won't be able to understand that unless we have a conversation about it.
Correct.
My conversation isn't meant to shame, blame, any of these things. I'm looking for understanding, which I'm not going to get unless we communicate. Yep. And if we're not willing to communicate, then we're really not willing to change. So then there isn't anything that I can do, which is, again, the reason why I say in the beginning, this is what I think that we're looking at. You know, here's what it is. Here's the understanding behind it. Like, this isn't, I think a lot of times people have reacted to, like, it's a death sentence. I'm like, guys, like, if anything, like, you can change that. Like, it's curable. Like, it's your personality. You can change that at any time. Think about it. Who you were at 15, is that who you are now?
Correct.
No. Who I was at 20 isn't who I am at 36. That you change your personality all the time. So please understand that with understanding and tools and challenging and reframing and healthy relationships, you absolutely can make the move. This isn't like a psychosis disorder where you need the meds to regulate your brain. Like, if anything,
it's not a knock on you as a person either. Of like, you're a shitty person. It's okay. What's within my control to change? I can change the way I perceive a situation. I can ask follow-up questions. I can take a beat before I say something out of anger or frustration or feeling hurt or feeling abandoned, right? Like, these are all things to explore. I used to recommend, books to people too. There was a book that I had that I loaned out that I never got back, which is why I don't lend out books. But it was Loving Somebody with BPD. So I feel like if you have BPD, you can give that to a partner to read. There's Stop Walking on Eggshells. It was kind of boring. I didn't love it, but it is one. And there is Stop Walking on Eggshells, I think, was better than I Hate You, Don't Leave Me.
Oof.
I think I Hate You, Don't Leave Me was a little bit like dry, where I was kind of like, is this almost over? But I literally read it like 12 years ago. Yeah. And the I Hate You, Don't Leave Me is kind of a hallmark statement. It's a push-pull relationship where you got to prove to me how much you want me to stay. I'm going to see if you really do love me. So I'm going to put you through hell and back. And if you leave, then I was fucking right. Yeah. Right. Yep. Yes. Which just sounds so exhausting for both parties. It is. It is exhausting. It is so exhausting being in a volatile relationship. And whether the volatility is 1 week out of 2 months, or if it is every other fucking week, it's still exhausting because then we start, this world of hypervigilance starts being created for partners. Yep. Because they don't know which version of you they're going to get. Yeah, when's the other shoe going to drop, right? We start operating in scarcity of like, oh, we got to love the good time now because we don't know when shit's going to happen and shit's going to hit the fan and how long it's going to take for us to get back to and when things are good, they're great. And when they're bad, they're fucking awful. and it feels never ending.
Well, and I think the thing that I bring up to clients all the time is like, when I hear that statement, well, when things are good, they're really good. You could be in a relationship where things are good all the time.
Correct.
80%, 90% of the time.
Or at least neutral. You know what I'm saying?
Literally. So, excuse me, help me understand then why we stay. Because again, it's not a judgment. I really need to understand or know why, so then we can take some of those factors and start to mitigate them. I'm worried about finances. I'm worried no one will ever love me. I'm worried, blah, 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 whatever that it is. They're all valid. Let's talk about it. There's so many reasons I told myself why I wouldn't leave my relationship. So many reasons until I started, working on those areas to be like, okay, I think I could do this. Okay. I think like, and then some of them were like, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to jump and see what happens.
If you are listening to this and you have the diagnosis of BPD, I want you to take a second. If you are in therapy, this is a very specific question. If you have BPD and you are in therapy, I want you to take a second to really think about how your sessions go with your therapist. Are you constantly putting out fires? Are you deflecting and talking about random things because you don't want to face what's really going on? Are you going into session like head on to be like, this is a shit I got to work on? I've seen all three of those examples in session for years. I cannot control what you choose to bring up in session. That's not under my control. I can't read your mind. I don't know what happened last week unless you tell me, right? So if you're deflecting because something really bad happened and you're worried that I'm going to judge you, and then you go back and be like, I mean, therapy's not really helping. I don't really talk about much. That's not on me. It's not comfortable to face and take responsibility for things that you feel shameful about, you're embarrassed about, you don't want to continue, right? That's not easy. Neither is living the way that you're living.
Correct.
So there has to be some form of self-awareness where you're like, fuck, it's going to suck, but like, I got to talk about this. Like, I really want to change this. Here's what I'm going to do about it. Right.
And if it's too hard to do it in that moment, send an email. These are the things that I want to work on in session. I'm feeling real vulnerable or motivated right now to bring them up, to discuss them with you. I don't know how I'm going to feel at session, but at least I'm making you aware right now.
Correct.
Game changer.
Yep.
Game changer.
I agree.
Because I ain't ever going to forget that email. I promise you that will be the first thing I bring up.
And again, this isn't to knock anybody with BPD or to shame anybody who's got a partner with BPD. Like this is just having an awareness of, again, what's within your control, how to handle situations and how to take control back in a way that feels good to you. Right. And your partner, if it's your partner that has it, or, vice versa, whatever. And hopefully this is helpful. But again, no two people are the same, just like no two depressed people are the same, or people with depression are the same. There are just kind of general things that are a theme, which is how you get diagnostic criteria. So
if you are somebody who has BPD and you are listening to this, you deserve a space here. You are enough. Your birthright is that you are enough, that you are deserving, that you are lovable, that you are all of those things. And I urge you, you could be at a fork in the road right now. I urge you to, instead of choosing the ways that you have learned to be able to keep yourself safe and survive in the situations that you grew up in, that you're in now, whatever that it is, I urge you to think about the possibility of what if. What if I was to lean into vulnerability? What if I was to say, what if I was to believe even just for a minute today that I was enough? What if I was to believe even just for a minute today that I am lovable? What if I was to lean into using one of these tools that I've been taught or heard or read about or whatever that it is in therapy? What if I was to do some of those things? All of those what ifs are tangible, right? I'm not asking for what ifs of, trying to predict the future. All of those what ifs are within your control to be able to do today. This isn't
also, what if I'm actually safe?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
What if this feeling is stability and I'm not used to that? That would make sense then that it's scary.
And that makes sense as to why they shake shit up.
Yes, that's understandable.
Yep.
You're cultivating chaos to feel comfortable. Here's the thing, you're not comfortable.
Nope.
You're not.
Nope. And that goes back to going back to old patterns of behavior that aren't effective for you.
You can find us at The Spooky Therapist. You can find me.
We're not both at The Spooky Therapist.
Us don't run Steph's account, so let me back up. You can find Steph at The Spooky Therapist. You can find me at BEAXO_11. Yeah, I wonder if I'll ever change that. That was,
I don't know.
So I think that I will.
I was listening to Shalene Johnson thing, and she was saying you should always have your name in your handle. So I was like, do I need to be Steph, The Spooky Therapist? I don't want to change it again.
I need to change mine because I really just don't like it anymore. Because it sounds like an AIM username, and I'm like, that's annoying. I also like made it when it was like 2013. So
sure.
You can find us at rewritingherstorypodcast@gmail.com. Email us any questions, concerns, or comments, and on Instagram we're Rewriting Her Story Podcast. I just want
and the YouTube
and the tube
The tube
you can find us. People have been watching, so
we're on our way to being millionaires. So
I'd like to just afford groceries without feeling like
I spent so much.
It's like I want Flips yogurts. I was like, gonna be bankrupt.
Guess I should guess we're in the middle of the street then. So
I hope you're happy. I'm just kidding. Hope you're happy. I don't get to eat breakfast this month because you wanted 3 Flips yogurts. And for anyone who's like, go to Costco, she doesn't like the Costco pack because she doesn't like key lime pie.
Oh,
which is understandable because key lime pie is disgusting.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of key lime pie either.
Gross. Anyways, until next time. Bye. Bye.